If you're watching this video right now, let me just say that it's an easier decision than you think it is. You just need to know what you're looking for. So then, with that in mind, what should you be looking for in a microphone? Well, much like the recent video I just put out called How to Choose the Perfect Interface, these aren't straightforward answers here. And sadly, as I have said many times before, I can't make the final call for you. This is like picking out underwear a lot of the times. I mean, you can just go with the tighty-whities of microphones and you're going to be just fine. But beyond that, your personal choice does have to be the final word. Remember, this isn't the video that's going to tell you the exact microphone to pick out, but it's going to give you all the tools and perspectives to do it yourself. And hopefully, a lot of this will help you narrow down your search. And starting out, we have a hard truth to hear. Not a single microphone is the most important part of your studio. Interface either. The most important part of any studio, home or professional, is treatment. You are better off with a $159 Rode NT1 and treatment on your walls than a bare room with a $3,000 U87AI. Believe me, you will get better recordings every time. Now, recently, I came across a wild conversation in my comments where someone was saying that the Austrian Audio OC18 was better in an untreated room than a TLM 102. And it just boggles my mind that anyone would consider paying that much for a mic without giving a single thought to the environment you're hooking it up in. Without treatment of some kind on your walls, you are never going to be happy with the sound. And much like everyone else out there, you're just going to blame the mic. Don't be like everybody else. Treat your room, and then on to step 2. And that step is, use case doesn't matter as much as you might think. However, there are some niche uses that you may want to consider depending on what you're doing. For example, are you doing professional voiceover? Well, maybe a pencil mic isn't for you. Buying a condenser for music production? Well, then there's some features you really might want. Or perhaps you literally need a specific microphone, like for miking from distance, like I'm doing here. Well, perhaps this is a bad time to pick up that ribbon mic you've had your eye on. Or maybe you're in the market for a wireless lav system. Well, if that's the case, an SM58 probably isn't right for you. What do you think? Pretty sleek, eh? Think anyone's gonna notice? But no matter what your main use is, once you figure it out, it will narrow the field for you and you can go from there. This decision is way more than just dynamic versus condenser though. So let's say you're a podcaster with more than one person in the room. Well, you're going to want to look at side rejection as a necessary selling point. Now, dynamics are generally great for this, like the SM58 or SM7B, or maybe even a condenser with a tight polar pattern like the LS208 from Lawton Audio. Now, while you're out watching reviews, this is the thing you really want to focus on. But let's get back to music production for a second. If this is your first mic, well, that tighty-whitey of microphones we talked about earlier is probably your go-to, hands down. But if you're looking at something like a condenser, a great thing to be watching for is the versatility of the options on the mic. EQ switches, yeah, they're okay, they're cool, but the polar pattern switches are something that can turn a one-trick pony into a show horse. Whether it's mid-side recording or just using those patterns for a different sound, this can be a big game changer. There are so many different situations here that there really isn't a one-for-all aside from, again, the tighty-whitey options. But once you've narrowed this down, your search is narrowed down even more. And the next one is kind of a bit of a warning. Expensive microphones don't matter. Now, of course, this comes with all the caveats, but if you're not in the process of upgrading your microphone arsenal and you're making money with the existing arsenal you have, you do not need to spend much on your microphones. Again, the last chapter does come into play, considering use case. But beyond that, if you can't make a Rode NT1 sound good, you won't be making an OC818 sound any better. And if an SM58 is just falling flat in your mix, a U87AI isn't going to do you any good. Now, those are two microphones that you will find in every studio around the world, no matter how glitzed up and glamorous it is. They are professional microphones. And you know what's great about that? Is you can do some amazing things with them despite their price. For example, Dylan and I did a cover of Hurt with just SM58s, and it's one of the best things I've ever heard come out of my mouth. And that's because Dylan's an amazing producer. Go ahead, watch it. Tell me it sounds bad. Remember, while you're learning, it's always advisable to be doing so on something affordable. However, there's a few catches to that whole last chapter I should point out. And those catches are that super cheap mics do actually matter. And here's the part that's actually going to make some waves. Be careful with spending on super cheap microphones. You are better off to save your money and get something that is tried and tested in a professional environment than to spend your money on something that very well may end up holding you back. I'm going to avoid naming names, but here's a good test. If you can't find it in a professional studio that charges average rates, it's probably not worth the money. Now, if you think I'm lying, remember, studios make razor thin profits. So if there's a way for them to save money with cheaper gear, trust me, they would. But that doesn't also mean that there aren't decent options that are in the affordable end of things. The AKG Perception series is awesome. I mentioned the Rode NT1 as well as the SM58, the Lewitt LCT 240, SCX1S. I mean, the list just goes on and on. And if you're sitting there grumbling that those options are still expensive, I'm sorry. The hard and ugly truth about audio is that it is expensive. That's not my fault, but it is a truth. We've all been there though. How did we do it? Well, we saved up our money and we pieced our setups together over time. But again, $100 and you can do all the things. It's not as far out of your reach as you might think. Just remember, it's okay to start small and build up. But if you start with something of quality, you're always going to have that mic in your collection to pull out when you need. Probably you won't be able to say the same for some of those super cheap mics. Now, you may have noticed that I haven't gone on about frequencies and mics for voices and all that jazz. And that's because if you're watching this, you're probably considering your first mic. And barring you having a friend that is an accomplished producer with perfect pitch, you're probably going in a bit blind. But you have to remember this. Not a single microphone you hear on an album or in a podcast or even in a video will be raw audio. It will always be produced, unless it's a review, that is. So don't worry so much about the frequencies and all that stuff, and work on getting your production skills up. Trust me, you can make any microphone sing and work for you. Now, before you ask, no, I'm not going to be answering any which mic should I buy questions down below. And that's going to be my litmus test to see who watched to the end of this video. Cheers, guys, and thanks for watching.
Solution time. Oh, yeah. That fall off. Very good.